Hi there, welcome along. This is Outdoor Gear Chat. We are on season 2, episode 2. This is going to be Stoves, Burning Ring of Fire. I'm joined as normal by Cathy. Hi, how are you? All right?
Hi, I'm good, Wayne. Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Cathy KC, co-director and owner of the Climber Shop in Ambleside and the Joe Brown Shops in Snowdonia. And today we have a special guest with us, fresh, I believe, from turning down a recent opportunity to compete on Strictly. It is none other than Mr. Stuart Smith. Stuart has completed expeditions across the globe and is a lecturer in outdoor education, a DOV assessor, and also seems to pop up on a lot of event safety with the BBC. So Stuart has been known to use a stove or two in his time. So welcome, Stu.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Morning, Wayne. Morning, Cathy.
Right.
That's a bit of a glamorous introduction.
Well, it is. You're a celebrity, mate. I've just told you that.
Yeah, I don't know which Strictly I turned it. I've strictly turned down a few things, I think. But there you go.
Strictly get that beard trimmed. Strictly
dancing requires a gimbal wrist, really, so you can keep your cup in a great way.
You can keep your pint, more at the point. Yeah.
Or a brew, as we're going to be talking about stoves.
Definitely.
Yeah. Brews are vital for, or stoves are vital for making brews. Absolutely.
Oh,
Good
the
work.
vitalist.
Vital. So yeah, well, just launch straight into it. There was a nice link in there. So we're going to be talking about stoves today. So what's the opener for stoves for in your view, you two? Where do you start from with stoves?
Never buy just one. That's the rule in this house. Yeah,
it's almost like bikes. It's like N+1. You sort of try one and think,
definitely. There's never enough. I am married to a man with a bona fide stove fetish. So we have a garage full of stoves. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, I did have a picture sent to me of the latest stove edition, which is actually a fire pit for the garden with a particular method of drawing the smoke back in and reburning it. So we haven't tried that one yet, but the stove seems to be getting bigger.
You're going to be doing kippers?
I thought your face then, Stu, you were like, oh, where can I get one of those from? That sounds fancy.
Well,
I can. You go to Isle of Man or somewhere like that and you'll get one.
Yeah, it's a Manx kipper. So that's what's your favourite stove then? Should we start off with that one? We'll narrow it down.
There's all sorts of talk about like boil times and things like that. Then I guess then whatever your favourite stove is, the one going to boil your brew the quickest, really.
Brew the quickest,
yeah. That's circumstances you get, but there's so many different variants of that. I remember in school, because I did go to school. It wasn't approved or anything. It was just a proper one. And I ended up going to school, and my physics teacher boiled water in a paper bag, and it was amazing. That sort of blew my mind. That sort of change was a game changer. I tried it, burnt my hand, and got it wet all at the same time. So there is a technique to doing it. And apparently, if you go up like that with altitude and lowering of pressure and all that sort of thing, you can boil water in a paper bag so that like the boiling point changes sort of thing with altitude.
Or in a school in Bolton, where the altitude's different as well.
Yeah, no, attitude.
The attitude, yeah. I'm absolutely amazed by that. How you do that? We'll have to research that afterwards, I think.
But it was the lovely Mr. Good. He taught us all sorts of things about physics. He brought his clarinet to teach us about waveforms. He was a really, really good runner as well. And he sort of worked out the angle of the track in Hungary or Budapest or wherever it is. And when he was running there once, and worked out the angle of the track and then put a sort of, not prosthetic thing, what do you call it? An ortho something in your shoe to help you lean a little bit.
Oh, right. Orthotic. Yeah.
That sounds like something you put in your tooth. But yeah, an orthotic thing so you could, I'm leaning now, so you could lean to get
a particular angle to get faster.
Yeah, it was a great teacher.
That's amazing.
From him. But yeah, maybe you could research that later about lowering the pressure to make water boil at lower than 100 degrees C.
In the paper bag.
I mean, that does happen naturally, doesn't it, at altitude? And you can sit there for hours waiting for your snow to melt.
Yeah.
But that's why if you're on a sort of a base camp for a prolonged amount of time, the pressure cooker is the way forward. Not just to save fuel, but it saves a colossal amount of time as far as cooking, boiling water and cooking food's concerned.
But that goes back then to sort of saving time and saving energy and all the rest of it. Goes back to it was Nansen, I think, when he was crossing Greenland, and he spoke with Primus, Swedish company there, who were making stoves at the time, and he sort of got them to make a pressurized stove which would preheat the fuel, so therefore he could use less fuel and go further. This is Invisible on Everest book that lovely Mike Parsons and Mary Rose put together, and they explain that was the sort of the fundamental of all our adventure travel from then in the 1800s or something.
Right,
yeah, and it still is. Any of your MSR stoves, basically it's that principle. You just, to start them, you have to prime them and create a pressure in your liquid fuel canister, allow a little bit of that water to fuel, whatever that may be, petrol,
Crikey, that
diesel.
would save a fortune.
God, yeah, you could burn water.
Hydrogen stoves, brilliant. You just add water to your water to get
a stove that could split the oxygen and hydrogen atom. That would be amazing.
Or like carbide lamps when you went mining.
Oh God, I used to live with a
don't get distracted with caving, you two. We can't get immersed into that. So we'll be talking about rubber and gloves and all sorts.
We're going off down a different wormhole.
Exactly, quite literally.
We don't want to delve down into that one.
No. So because that and priming, then what's priming all about? Just for those, I know, because we quite often get a bit technical sometimes in these chats, don't we? So for those people who are just normally used to screwing a canister into a jet boil, for example, what's priming all about? And what's liquid
priming
fuel?
it's just for your liquid fuel. If you have a gas stove, there's no priming required, unless these days you have a liquid gas combo stove, because you can get stoves that will burn both a gas and a liquid fuel. And sometimes you need to swap over a component to allow it to do that. But there is a stove from a Japanese company called Soto.
Oh, I've got one of those,
where you don't need to do anything. You can just put on whichever fuel you want. It's dead clever.
Yeah, I've got one of those. That saved a lot of pricking. For those of you who might remember, you used to get like a long-handled stick with like a little pin on the end.
Yeah.
And if you change your nozzle over, I'm doing it now so you can see it, but when you
it really works audio-wise, yeah.
No, but you used to turn the nozzle over, and you got a sort of slightly wider nozzle or slightly wider hole on the nozzle on one side than you did on the other side. So depending on what fuel you had, because fuel was quite dirty really, whether it was diesel, petrol, like Coleman multi-fuel stoves were a bit of a favourite and things like that in the 80s and 90s. From what I'm told, obviously I was too young for all that business, but and you used to have a pricker, and you used to have to prick the hole to stop it clogging up with all the dirtiness.
I like that. Proper safety first. Let's stick a pricker in our gas canister. All right.
No, only in your liquid fuel. Only in your liquid fuel.
Liquid fuel.
But it was that hole that your liquid fuel came through, and that soaked a little pad underneath, and that's what you lit. And essentially the heat from that flame heats a tube that the liquid fuel is coming through, and that heat turns that liquid into gas, and that's what makes your stove efficient. So even though it's a liquid fuel stove, as you're burning it, you are actually burning it in a gas form, and it's the priming that's required to create the heat to do that.
That goes back to Mr. Googe and flammable and inflammable. What's the differences between flammable and inflammable? And that also then dictates what type of fuel that you choose. When you mentioned earlier about, do you use gas, do you use multi-fuel, do you use hydrogen, as Cathy was alluding to?
That's not advisable.
No, not yet.
Space 1999 has moved on now by a few years. Now we're now in like looking at 2028 when Captain Scarlet was around. And fuel is one of your biggest choices, really, isn't it? It's how do you carry that fuel that we're talking about, for then to make sure that your journey is as safe and as possible as you can.
As well as getting efficiency when you're cooking as well, of course, yeah, because that, like you say, you need to be able to boil your brew quickly enough, but it's got to be, it's got to be safe and at the right temperature and all that. Sorry,
yeah. And sadly, obviously, cooking in tents and things like that, or in snow holes, or in caves, or wherever, leads to its own badness, really. People have been really ill and died as well from it, really. So that's the sort of, as you were saying about safety sort of side of it, that's a massive criteria for picking your favourite stove. Which one can you actually use in the environment that you're going to, whether it's very, very cold, very, very high, or very, very hot. Generally, hot weather also creates different problems if you're taking gas stoves, with expansion of metals and all the rest of it sort of thing. But yeah, it's got to be sort of considered whether you use white spirits, which is liquid, or whether you use isobuprotein, melange.
Which,
I used to love reading it all in different languages on the side of the canister. I used to get Coleman stoves, or Epigas, which was from like Stockport.
Oh, Epigas back in the day, yeah.
And I used to read it on the side, and that was like, whilst sort of waiting for my brew, 2 to 3 minutes or whatever it was. Melange de gaz or whatever it was.
And that's how you learn Icelandic. Is what you say.
Yeah.
It's
good, yeah, right. To speak the Icelandic.
It's funnier with the face, I think. Sorry, it's probably not going to come across it audio wise. Your little face when you did the look at that. So what? But yeah, so and that's an important point as well, isn't it? All gas isn't the same, is it? And all liquid isn't the same. There's all those different types of those that you can use, all with their own properties, I guess.
Yeah, the liquids you can use different, well, they're basically you've got petrol, you've got fossil fuels in all their various different guises. You can use aviation fuel.
Quite literally rocket fuel.
Well, right, that's probably a bit pricey, I would think.
Anyway,
and you can also use these stoves that allow you to use twigs. You can use twigs to recharge your phone on some stoves as well. Although
like
if it's raining, you've got a bit of an issue with your fuel. You can use methylated spirit. You can use fuel gels. Clean white spirit fuels burn really well on any liquid fuel. They're the most the cleanest liquid fuels, like Coleman fuel, and I think primers call theirs power fuel. That's a really good one to use on liquid fuel stoves, and that means you don't have to do anywhere near as much maintenance. If you're using diesel, for example, you have to clean your stove pretty much after every use, and use your pricker each time as well, just to keep
your pots and your lungs and your stomach lining.
Yes. When it comes to gas, you've got different canisters, and you'll see different canisters in our shops, and there'll be different prices as well, even though they're the same size, and there's a reason for that. There's some that are propane, some that are butane, and some that are a blend. They're an isobutane, and they all have different properties. So propane, for example, is very versatile. You can use it for backpacking stoves in small canisters. You can use it in the big canisters for double burners, and you can burn it all season. And Stu's holding up one of his little Coleman gas canisters there. The downside of that, and this is a bizarre thing to talk about as far as gas is concerned, is weight. It's a little heavier. Right. Butane, just because of the way that it's compressed, is lighter. So if you're backpacking, butane can be a better option where every gram counts. But it won't work in cold or at altitude anywhere near as well. And actually, it'll get to a point where it won't work at all. To get around that, you can use a blended gas, isobutane, and that tends to be more expensive. That offers the lightweight qualities of butane, but it doesn't freeze at 0 degrees. However, if you are going to a colder region, you need to be aware that it only burns to -14 or thereabouts. So that's when liquid fuel comes into its own. And if you're traveling remotely, then it's normally much easier to get hold of any kind of
some form of liquid fuel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that
and
was
transportation, then therefore sort of taking it on planes and things like that.
Yeah.
Gas canisters are pressurized.
Right.
You take it on a plane and they slap your wrists
Yeah.
quite severely, really.
Yeah.
And same with lighters and things like that. So your source of ignition needs to be sort of thought about too. Obviously, a lot of stoves have got the piezo sort of clicky
Like built in, yeah.
I would use those as a sort of backup as well, and always sort of take a different sort of an extra form of ignition as well, really. Whether it's a flint and steel.
Right.
Sorry?
I was just going to ask that question,
whether it's like
Stu.
A flint. Oh, right.
Yeah.
I preempted you.
Yeah, no, you did. Yeah. Always,
well,
mate. But yeah,
or
whether you take stuff like waterproof matches as well, but would flint and steel, I guess, transportation-wise, if you're going on aviation, it's a bit easier to carry than a box of matches, for example, is it?
It is, yeah. Obviously, you need to check with aviation laws and things like that about what you can take and where you take it, whether it goes in the holder, whether it goes in your baggage. But then flints and steels are sort of pretty universal. They'll work anywhere at any altitude. They're not wind dependent and things like that. They're a very, very low energy source. So if you drop a spark from a flint and steel on your kit, it generally doesn't burn it away, like if you're dropping a match or you're dropping a light on it or something like that. So they're very, very low energy and easy, relatively easy to do in any conditions, even with gloves on and all the rest of it, sort of thing. They do need shielding, obviously, like with your stove, that needs shielding from the elements too, whether it's wind, rain, or whatever else.
Snow or whatever. And that I guess, and that's where all the experience that you've got from places like, whether it's the Himalaya or Morocco or whatever, you've got that variation of knowledge as far as taking a stove. So do you have a stove that you have available for multiple uses like that, then, that you could use in the mountains as well as the desert, for example, or is it a very different thing for you, Stu?
There's a lot of favourite ones. There's like the sort of one that Cathy was just talking about. It seems to have come in from Japan reasonably recently, and
right.
has a bit of a, there's an old school MSRs and whisper lights and things like that. They seem to have taken over the sort of multi-fuel transition of going into cold areas and things like that. They're really, really, really easy to clean in the field and things like that. I remember we were out in Norway, and there's like a little leather patch in it, which is part of the priming function, and you pump the handle up and down. That gets you a little bit warm. You look at it for a little bit and think for a little bit, and that gets you a little bit warm thinking. And then you try and light the thing, but the leather patch dissolved in our stove, so therefore we couldn't light it. We couldn't get it going at all. We couldn't get the thing to pressurize. We could set light to fuel, but that didn't really help. So we were then stuck for something like 26 hours without fuel, and therefore not being able to brew up and not being able to heat the tent or anything like that. Then. So we had to sort of cuddle a little bit with this ex-Marine guy that I was sharing a tent with. Slightly interesting.
I was going to say
there's a different story.
There's an image. There's an
set of
different audience, X-rated.
Yeah, sleeping bag usage.
It's Saturday night chat over a few pints, that one, isn't it?
And the other thing to go, of course, yeah. The other thing to go with it then is flasks and like I was very fortunate to be given a SIG flask recently, and it was brilliant. It's kept water warm in it for 24 hours. Warm enough to put back onto the boil again, and it'll boil up much quicker than being sort of sitting in a plastic bottle, sort of sitting there waiting, sort of thing. And that in itself's a bonus, really.
By flask, you just mean like a standard like vacuum flask, a thermos flask, as was, but
you mean that style? Maybe not a tartan one, maybe not made out of glass, and maybe not sort of sitting in granny's handbag or whatnot, with like nested cups on the top of it, or anything like that.
Exactly,
Isn't there's nested cups, one with an handle and one without, like.
I have hot chili flasks in my flasks. They're absolutely amazing. They do, like you said, they can keep water literally
Hydro
hot.
Flask, there's another one they're a very, very sort of new brand. SIG is obviously very, very, it's a very traditional Swiss brand that's been around for a very long time. thermos. It's become like a generic term, hasn't it?
Yeah,
It's like,
well, like Hoover.
hoovering,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
when you're not actually hoovering, you vacuuming sort of thing. Oh,
Yeah.
there we are, back to vacuum.
Yeah.
It's not really a vacuum though. So Mr. Goods taught me this as well. So it's not really a vacuum. It's just a gas generated thing. Because obviously, if it was a vacuum, it would implode. But there we go.
I can't know. You're getting too deep.
Deep stuff, yeah.
Too deep for me this time on.
Superficially, I am quite deep actually.
Superficially, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how long we've known each other, but I'm learning stuff about you this morning that I didn't know about you anyway, Stu, on all sorts of levels. But yeah,
I went to school.
Well, yeah, that was the primary one, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, right.
No.
And I listened a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You took it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just come back to Cathy's point about burning twigs and stuff like that as well. And you mentioned, I think it was just before we started recording, about Kelly kettles and that sort of, I don't know, not that brand, but that method of cooking or heating.
Yeah, well, we used to take the Kelly kettle out with us if we were on days out when the kids were small and in buggies, because we used that to boil water to heat bottles. Basically, if it was just an attempt at a kind of a backwoodsy day out with young children, but it's a great method, and you don't need to take anything with you except for the kettle, which doesn't weigh a lot. They are bulky, but they don't weigh a lot. They're not something you'd go backpacking with, definitely.
Remember to take the bung out.
Yeah, you definitely have to remember to take the bung out. Yeah, and actually, it took a while to work out where to put the water. Actually, I was quite confused because they work on like a chimney principle. So you basically got a hollow cylinder of metal, if you like, and the water fills a reservoir around it. That probably doesn't work as a description on the podcast at all, and you also do need to be careful if you decide to put twigs in the top, because obviously that is the chimney and all the heat comes out and you can end up burning your fingers. So loading from the bottom. The stove where you can recharge your phone, that does take a bit of getting used to, and you do need to have quite a stash of twigs next to you to recharge your phone. So it's worth using that before you go out and about, and use it in anger. And that's the same with any stove, really.
Just explain that a bit more for me. What's that? What's that? So you can use to charge your phone by burning twigs. I'm struggling with that sort of concept.
Yeah, it's a particular stove and a particular type of stove, and it'll work on twigs. You can basically feed it with twigs, and it uses witchcraft to turn that into a charge.
I thought it was smoke and mirrors.
But you do need a lot of twigs. Yeah.
It's like anything else. If you sort of in a polar area, you need a big bag of snow that you've already collected and sort of chopped up as small as possible, and which then is going to boil down hopefully and break down quicker into your water. And the same as Cathy was just saying there, you do need a lot of twigs. Therefore, taking it when you've got young children with you, go off and collect some twigs, and they come back with
works
twigs.
really well.
Or they come back with a full flipping tree that they're like, look what I can carry.
Yeah, they're hauling it. That's what mine are like.
Into a lumberjack all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then you have to whittle it down and whatnot to.
That keeps you warm as well.
I was going to say with the axe that you've handily brought with you.
Rub the two sticks together as well. The best form I think of that is rubbing two sticks with like little pink ends on, so that it actually ignites.
These sticks called matches. Yeah.
Those Kelly kettles also get called gilly kettles because they were a thing that was sort of used out in the woodlands, obviously, and out in the Highlands up in Scotland and all the other places. And they are really, really sort of efficient, just in the styling. They're just not super efficient in the fuel method, really.
Yeah.
No.
You can use them a little bit with solid fuel blocks and things like that, hexamine blocks, if people have come across those. Very lightweight sort of stove that gets used on, or used to get used on mountain marathons a lot. So like the 2-day mountain marathons, which is sort of tradition that's coming up to 2-day mountain marathon season now. The Alm isn't very far off, and people used to use little hexamine blocks. And I think you mentioned previously, like you could go to sort of a tiny piece of titanium that weighed 5 grams or something like that. Stick a hexamine block on the end of it, smoke yourself silly in your under your tent, and then not quite get a brew at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Get something tepid is
You
probably,
get something tepid and
yeah.
something that can sort of go down, but it's not going to burn your lips and become a lip smacking moment in your life.
No, exactly. Well, and not in the UK, especially if you're burning those. I'd used them, used them abroad, and it was a bit more efficient then, because obviously you didn't have wind and rain coming in sideways, so 1 or 2 hexi blocks, and you'd probably have enough for a brew and your rehydrated meal as well. But yeah, on a wet Langdale campsite or whatever, you're not gonna. Yeah, it's not gonna be the same, is it? But they're just brilliant things, aren't they? It is again like witchcraft. This tiny bit of titanium that you're then using as a stove with some form of kettle on top of it.
Yeah, and the original sort of hexamine stove is it's like the cheapest way to cook food. Really, it's incredibly cheap.
Comes
like
from a very
£5
militaristic background, doesn't it? And it was always was always tied in with a ration pack, and it was always tied
yes.
Well, and it's funny, that you say that, because my lad's just with cadets at the moment. He's in the army cadets, and they're still flogged those sort of the hexi stoves, the big fold out one, the Highlander basically is what is the brand, isn't it? As was with a load of hexi blocks. I'm like, surely what? I show Reese the Alp kit version of the jet boil that I've got, the brew kit, where you're just like, look, just carry that. It's really, really lightweight. It's going to get you brewing next to no time, and just tip the water in your meal then, rather than having to carry 12 kilos worth of hexi blocks around with you.
That's what you get with being a cadet and not a regular, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess
took a group of Gurkhas out not long ago, and they as soon as they stop, tea, chai, and things like that is a big thing in sort of Nepali culture.
Yeah.
And I was working with some Gurkha soldiers, and the first thing that they did, they made a brew on like a jet boil sort of style of stove, which is very efficient. It's got a great heat exchanger on the bottom of it and things like that. They are a bit bulky, and they are sort of posh kettles. But anyway, they made this brew and gave me this brew. I was like, whoa, we've got a major with us. Why don't you give that? And he's like, no, you're our guest. You get the brew first. So they made a brew for me and then give one to the major as well. And then sat there and continued to eat these Maggi noodles or YY noodles raw. And you think,
no, they're bad when they're cooked.
Yeah. And they just eat them like sort of crisps or biscuits or whatever.
No.
Like the chai is one that's important bit and gets brewed up, and these sort of noodles, YY Maggi noodles, whatever they are, just get chewed on. And like the little shaker packet that you get in there, the curry flavouring or whatever it is, you just neck that as though it's like a condiment.
Oh my god! I knew Gurkhas was hard, but blimey,
that's efficiency though, isn't it? Yeah, priority is get your brew right. Yeah. The brew will wash the noodles down. Away you go. Brilliant.
And jump up and down, and that's it. It's hard,
give it a shake.
That's it. Ready to going off and maraud things.
Maraud. But were they using jet boil? Did you say? Oh, that style.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So that sort of style of cooker is really, really taken off. With a little heat exchanger pan. Obviously, a jet boil is again, it's become a bit of a generic term, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Vacuuming and all that sort of thing, or hoovering. But yeah, you get that sort of thing with a heat exchanger bottom. Basically, if you look at it, the bottom's got like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of sort of castellated metalwork on the bottom, and that makes it much more efficient. Due to, I'm sure if Mr. Googe was here now, he'd be able to tell us. All the science behind it.
Yeah, and I guess it is, isn't it? It's diverting all the heat up and presumably recycling that a little bit, so it's not let out the sides, which a lot do. But I know, we've got that. We just had the one, and it's come up about the timing, but we're counting down, but we've still got a bit of time. If you're all right, still chatting. Are you all right with timing? Yeah. Oh, look at that! Chat till the cows come on. Because I just want to, based on your generic term there, I've run out of brew actually, which is terrible, isn't it? Stu just picked up his mug.
Prior preparation.
I know. Well, yeah, I know. Stu just
won this mug. I won this mug off Gainer.
Yeah.
Because I got the best radio comment on Grand Tour Skidar. I know Joe Faulkner was up at the top. Charlie Sharp was winning. And I'd got to the bottom by the side of the road in the car. I thought, no brew kit, no. So I got on the radio and said, Joe, can you give Charlie Sharp a tea bag or two to bring down to me? And he said,
No.
He said, you've got a car and you're outside the road and I'm at top of the mountain. And so I never got one, but again, I heard this on the radio and awarded me a pint pot, a Dotty pint pot. There you go.
I thought it was just a normal mug, but your head's small, so it was.
I do tuck turns. Turns in bottom of it. I'm like Tom Daly in the brain.
But back to generic terms, I just wanted to mention pocket rocket and the MSR pocket rocket style as well. Yeah. And I guess they've got the place, haven't they? But then there's the windshielding thing, as we mentioned a couple of times briefly. I always struggle with those because they have. It's just everything's exposed, isn't it? So it's great because you've got that
extra thick foil is always really useful. Just a roll of extra thick foil. You can sort of put that underneath you can use that as a heat generator to lift the heat upwards. You can then use it as a windshield or a separate one as a windshield as well. So extra thick foil just to wrap around your sort of pocket rocket sort of style of stove. Makes things a lot
you can get those as spares as well, but it is worth noting if you have a look at the manufacturer's instructions, because some of them do say don't ever put a foil windshield around this. I did learn that the hard way, and it's because some of them give out such an intense heat. If that heat it's designed, obviously the heat is all designed to go up into whatever you're cooking, and if you've got a windshield around it that's too high, if that heat is brought back in, it does warm the gas canister, which is a situation you don't really want, particularly if you're in a tent environment or in a camp environment. So it is just worth checking and using maybe natural wind windshields.
As Cathy's just said, it lifts your stove up. So there's a lot of gas canisters now that's all with little feet, little sort of fold out feet that are really, really useful. In colder conditions, I used to use those little sort of circular hand warmers that goes under the dimple of the gas canister.
Yeah.
You sort of pop that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Gas canister warm, and then you've got a bit more of efficiency because obviously, you use LPG gas and you put your hand on the outside and it'll freeze to the outside. So utilizing your gas thing is useful. You can sort of get little neoprene sleeves for your gas canisters now, which keeps it a little bit warmer, but not always best. It's well worth practicing, and in a ventilated place. And with something that's going to put it out, whether it's water or whether it's foam or whatever it is. Practice.
Yeah, and you just said a really important word there as well, Stu, just about stability with the feet, because if you're cooking for more than one person and you're needing to use bigger pans on your stove, then an integrated canister system, if you like, where the stove goes on top of the gas canister, you need to think about the size of the canister that you're going to be using with it, because it can tip over really easily. Maybe a remote canister type stove, so where your little stove has got its own feet and there's a tube coming off to your gas canister. And that gas canister sits separately, and sometimes you can have that gas canister tucked in your jacket because it's separate from the stove, just as to keep it warm. But when it comes to sort of cooking for more than one person, then sometimes the remote canister situation or sort of stove setup it can be a better option.
The little feet system thing, you make sure it's on a stable platform as well. If you're going to be stepping over it, make sure your cooking area is in a safe place. Cooking away from your tent is handy if you can do it. Cooking away in snow, your stove will melt into the snow, and then all of a sudden you can't get at it to turn off or whatever it is. A good friend of ours, John Bamber, he's gone through many iterations of making stove boxes that are great stable platforms. And ultimately you just trap the lid down and that sort of seals off the thing and hopefully puts the flame out as well. I have seen sort of methylated spirit stoves where they've been used by groups, and one young lad got a little bit angry and he just kicked the thing across the campfire. It was a beautiful rainbow of
fire.
I'm sure it was like Cirque du Soleil. I was waiting for the white helmets just to come through in the motorbike formation and impressed me no end. They didn't. It
was just a bunch of scouts running around screaming, was it? Yeah.
They weren't quite scouts, but that sort of thing. I've had stoves, tents given back to me with little superb sized holes that sort of trangia sort of size. We've not mentioned transias either.
Transias, they're iconic.
I know we've got to go shoe on tranches in because we've got 4 minutes.
So Trangia stoves are super useful stoves. Very they come again from a Swedish sort of background, Scandinavian type of background. So therefore it's simple and reliable, and used a lot by a lot of DAV style groups and scout groups, and that sort of great introductory things. I took one to Iceland for 4 weeks, and all we took was the burner unit, and just had to use little stones to balance our pan around it, and measured out our fuel, so that we had sort of semi-efficient fuel, but we didn't have any contingency really.
Yeah, top Trangia fact though.
Sorry, say again.
Top Trangia fact. It was first prototype was 1951, and it's not changed. It's such a good.
Bit like you, Wayne.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah.
Like your jokes, yeah, terrible. Go on, yeah. Well, there's a good. That's a good sign of a good design, though, isn't it? If you get it right first time, blooming heck.
Yeah, you've got, so basically the beauty of it is you've got your burner unit, and you've got your windshield, and you've got a collection of pots and potentially a kettle, depending which style you buy, and your frying pan, all nested down into one little unit. And you can buy non-stick, you can buy stainless, but it's absolutely perfect. It's been used on so many different trips. Now, Wayne, I know you love the history of words and where they might have come from.
I do.
I discovered that the name Trangia came about because they're still made, actually 100 years later. The same factory is there in the Swedish village of Trång. And I've just had my Swedish friend confirm the pronunciation, but that's spelled T-R-A with a little dot over it, N-G. And so they removed the circle, and so it is T-R-A-N-G, and they added I-A at the end for in aluminium. So that's where the name Trangia came from.
Love it. Love that sort of thing. It's like the background to nylon and stuff like that, isn't it? It's similar. We are running very, very short time. We've got a minute and a half. What do we need to shoe on in before? Can I recycle my gas canister?
Yes, you can. You can buy a little gizmo. I think they're about £9 possibly, and it's a jet boil crunch it, and that allows you to safely depressurize your gas canister, small camping gas canister, and that can then be put in with standard metal recycling.
Awesome.
Cathy mentioned about weights of gas canisters. You can also get a thing that will screw on now, and it's a pressure and weight thing. So therefore you've got your big canister, and you don't know how much is in it. You shake it next to your head, and therefore you're like, oh, do I take that one? Do I take that one? And the amount of partially filled gas canisters that are just lying around in people's garages and all the rest of it, sort of thing. So you can measure it. You can even now sort of change from sort of lower pressure to higher pressures reasonably safely. They do need to make sure that your screw thread's on correctly. And
go on. Yeah, we are going to get cut off shortly. So sorry, Stu. We might have to come back another time. This has been Outdoor Gear Chat. We've been talking stove, so that was burning ring of fire. I don't think we've got time to do the normal gubbins at the end, Cathy, I'm afraid. So thanks for listening.
Not to
We'll
worry.
be back again soon. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Cathy.
I'm off to listen to Johnny Cash now.
Excellent. Burns, burns, burns.